The analysis of the notes with Lucas and Clara from El Comercio from Ecuador.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling some really critical international news that's just breaking. The peace talks between Israel and Hamas, well, they've hit another wall. And right after that, we got some, frankly, incredibly strong statements from Donald Trump. Just to set the scene for you, it's Friday, July 25th, 2025, and everything we're discussing comes straight from statements made right outside the White House. So this is very current.
Right, and our mission in this deep dive is pretty clear. We want to unpack what Trump is actually accusing Hamas of here. We need to understand the background, why these specific talks fell apart, and then explore what it all means, really. And we'll do that by carefully going through the source material you've shared. The goal is just to give you a clear picture, cut through all the noise.
Okay, let's dive right in then. What exactly did Donald Trump accuse Hamas of? What was the main thrust of it?
He was very direct, yeah. Trump basically said Hamas didn't want a deal because, and this is his quote, they were not willing to release the last hostages. And that unwillingness, he claimed, that's what made the U.S. and Israel walk away from the table.
That phrase, not willing to release the last hostages, that's incredibly stark language, isn't it? How does that usually land in these kinds of, super sensitive diplomatic moments? What does it tell us about where the U.S. might be heading?
Well, it definitely signals things are hardening up, less room for diplomatic give and take, maybe.
Yeah.
When someone like Trump uses language that definitive, it kind of frames the whole situation as, well, maybe negotiation isn't the path anymore. It suggests, maybe a more confrontational stance is coming. It implies the other side isn't acting in good faith.
And his other language was just as striking. He actually said, I imagine what will happen is that they will have to be hunted down. And his assessment, wow. Hamas didn't want to reach an agreement. I think they want to die. And that's something very, very bad. And it has come to a point where you will have to finish the job. Pretty blunt.
Extremely blunt. And he backed that up, saying Hamas will have to fight and will have to be gotten rid of. So his core point, the accusation, is that Hamas is refusing to return those last hostages from the October 7th attacks, both the living and, tragically, the dead. As reported, it lays out a very clear, sort of unyielding position. It points towards, well, maybe military action is the conclusion.
And beneath all this talk, all the politics, there's the human side, the hostages. That's the real heart of it. What are we hearing now about the numbers? How many are still believed to be held?
The sources we have point to about 50 hostages still being held by Hamas. But, and this is the really grim part, Israeli authorities estimate that maybe only about 20 of those 50 are actually still alive.
Just 20. God, those numbers. It just hits home the human tragedy here. How does that awful reality, the fact that so few might be left alive, how does that weigh on the negotiations based on the sources?
Oh, it puts almost unbearable pressure on everyone involved. I mean, every single day makes it less likely for the living and complicates things for recovering the deceased. And Trump actually spoke to this difficulty. He said, I've always said that those last 10 or 20 hostages will be the most difficult because Hamas knows what will happen when they don't have a bargaining chip, and they really broke the agreement. So he sees them as Hamas's last, major point of leverage. Without that bargaining chip, their whole strategic position shifts. Right? The incentive to trade them for just a truce kind of evaporates.
And looking at it from Hamas' side, do the sources give any clues about why these specific hostages might be seen as, well, non-negotiable? Is it just about leverage?
The sources seem to suggest it's actually deeper than just leverage for a pause in fighting. For Hamas, these hostages seem tied to their biggest demands. We're talking a complete Israeli withdrawal, maybe releasing a very large specific group of Palestinian prisoners. So it's less about a tactical pause, a temporary ceasefire, and more about their fundamental goals for ending the conflict entirely. That makes releasing them incredibly difficult without huge concessions.
Okay, so we have Trump's very strong words setting the immediate tone. Let's maybe peel back the layers now on the negotiations themselves. Where were these talks actually happening, and who made the final call to pull out?
Right. They were taking place in Doha, in Qatar. And the timeline seems to be Thursday, July 24th, that's yesterday, the U.S. Special Envoy, Steve Witkoff, ordered his team out. That happened just a few hours after Israel had already announced their withdrawal. And both sides basically said the same thing. Hamas showed a lack of willingness to agree to a 60-day truce in Gaza.
Okay, a 60-day truce was on the table. What about the specifics from Hamas's side? What were the demands they reportedly hardened that caused everything to collapse?
Well, according to Israeli media reports, Hamas apparently got tougher on several key things. These included the exact numbers, how many hostages for how many prisoners. That's always a sticking point. Also, the scope of the Israeli army's withdrawal from Gaza, how far from where. And interestingly, a specific point about the American Humanitarian Foundation for Gaza, the GHF.
The GHF, what was the issue there? Aid distribution.
It seems like it, but maybe more nuanced. The sources suggest it wasn't just about the aid getting in, but more about the control and the oversight of how it was distributed. It sounds like it touches on deeper issues for Hamas, sort of sovereignty concerns within Gaza. So yeah, each of these apparently became deal breakers.
Right. Given how big a decision this is, walking away from talks, was there any high-level communication? Did Trump talk to key leaders in the region about it?
Yes, he did. He confirmed he spoke with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about pulling out, but Trump also mentioned he found that conversation, quote, a bit disappointing. He didn't elaborate, though, didn't share the details.
A bit disappointing. Leaves a lot unsaid. Okay, so bringing this all together for you, our listener, what's the core takeaway here? Why do these specific details actually matter?
I think what these details really show is that this breakdown isn't just some vague unwillingness. It's really a clash of fundamental visions for what the end looks like. Deeply opposed visions, probably. You've got Hamas, it seems, playing a longer game, looking for strategic wins down the road. And then you have Israel and the U.S. focus much more on the immediate security situation and, crucially, getting those hostages back. So even something specific like the GHF's role in aid becomes a kind of proxy battle for these much bigger, maybe intractable issues of who's really in control, Makes finding a simple fix incredibly hard.
Okay, so just to quickly recap for everyone listening, we've looked at Donald Trump's very strong words blaming Hamas, specifically their alleged refusal to free hostages for the talks failing. We also dug into the details of how the negotiations in Doha fell apart and those specific hardened demands that led the U.S. and Israel to walk away.
So considering these talks have failed again, and you have this really stark language from Trump, finish the job, get rid of Hamas, it leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What could the next phase look like? Could things escalate further? And, maybe most critically, what does this mean for the fate of those last, most difficult-to-release hostages? That's something to really mull over.
Comment, subscribe and share. More information at www.commerce.com.